Alright, so back for part two, discussing Oppenheimer still. Just Gio and I here. Um, Last we left off, we were just talking about, the sort of display of the remorse. And it was something I mentioned in part one, that I just really liked how they showed that contrast, like, from the very beginning, like, they showed that, like, a lot of different scientists just weren't up to the idea, one of the ones I highlighted obviously was Oppenheimer's best friend Isaac Robbie, who he just like his line from the very beginning was I don't want all the years of work in the physics world to like lead to all of this, and like that was something illustrated from like the very beginning that like yeah that like all these different scientists have put years of work into physics, especially when it came to the US, like making it an actual viable department. And now it's like instead of valuing their work, it's like the only value they see in it is, for a war, to help them win a war. And one thing that we forgot to mention in part one, Oppenheimer's dealing with all this remorse, and he goes to talk to the president about it, and the president sort of just dismisses his remorse by saying, those people in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they're not looking at you and blaming you. They're looking at me, because Oppenheimer was like, oh, I feel I've got blood on my hands, which, you can understand why he feels that way. He's the one that built this bomb. But, the president basically tells him, they're not looking at you, they're looking at me because I'm the one that dropped it, and it leads to this funny line where, after he leaves, you hear him say, don't let that crybaby back in here, But I really like that sort of little scene in Convo because it really sort of illustrates that, like, at the end of the day, it's like a lot of these people are always... or it kind of highlights sort of the innocence, in a sense, of, how do I want to put it? Like, I guess all the people, like all the regular people and all that, because, like, at the end of the day, it's these world powers that, should be shouldering all the blame and guilt, because, like, with the bombings, it's like, was it the world leaders that had to suffer? No, it was the innocent people in those two cities that, had to suffer and be the sort of, I don't know what's the word, but like, like they had to be the examples, I guess you could say. And like they mentioned in the movie.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, the sacrifice. Like they mentioned that in the movie, like bombing one of the cities was to show the bomb, and bombing the second city was to show that they can keep doing it, And that was sort of like a horrifying nature to be like on display with their mindset of it all, But it is something that even comes up in the movie where, during the security clearance scenes, they ask Oppenheimer, like if he knew about, like, I guess the consequences, like why did he continue through? And, he mentions it, that, and it's also something that's, like, commonly shown throughout the movie. He was just doing what he was told, and they don't look at it as a good enough answer, but really, he was just doing what he was told, like, there's also a scene where he ends up getting interrogated by this one military agent, Sergeant Pesh, I think it was. And, Groves finds out the information he told them, and he was like, oh, why didn't you tell me about it? And that's when Oppenheimer tells him, if you instruct me, I'll tell you right here, right now. And Groves tells him, it's not, you shouldn't have to be instructed. This is stuff that you have to willingly come to me and tell me about. And, that's something that they just highlight throughout is that, and it was something Dominic mentioned at the end of the last episode, it's like, is that truly a way we can look at it, that a lot of these scientists just sort of felt forced into it, that they felt that they had to do it, not that they had a choice. And it brings up the point that Dom mentioned at the end, if it wasn't Oppenheimer leading this part of the project, or if it wasn't, certain scientists being involved, would they have gotten someone else, and would someone else have been able to build it?
I think it would have been made regardless, but it wouldn't have been made as quickly without Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer's ability to control and make it as efficient as possible is why we got it when we got it, and not years later. Because the Germans, they had Heisenberg, but they were still years behind the Americans when it came to the building of the bomb. So I think Oppenheimer played a big role in the development of the atomic bomb. Hence why he took most of the blame. But I did this film. I saw like a lot of they made a Reddit for it, and I was reading a lot of the things. And the whole thing that this movie isn't for everyone, because of all its historical fact. It doesn't have the typical storyline that most films have now, where there's like a problem and a solution. Because like the majority, like the last 5 years, has literally just been like superhero movies. So people are used to that, and I think some guy said that this movie is best for people that don't know. So it's like a learning experience from it, and this movie is very educational as well as entertaining, because I learned a lot, bro. Like, I did not know. I told you guys, I did not know that Oppenheimer had that much influence over the policies, or I didn't know his name carried that much weight in, like in American politics at the time. And I don't know, he was literally him. He was literally him during the 1940s. He was literally Oppenheimer is, if you have a problem, Oppenheimer is like the guy to go to when it comes to like physics or whatever. And it's so eye-opening, I guess, because I saw some dude call it the most important movie of our generation, and I low-key, it's true, bro, because like we were shown the reality of the atomic bomb and of that period. So now when someone brings up, the chance of nuclear war, or Kim Jong-un is threatening Japan or the U.S. of firing nuclear weapons again, it's a lot more horrifying now, because back then it's like, oh yeah, the atomic bomb, big boom, people die. But now that now that I've seen, how horrifying it actually is, I'm just like, yeah, let's not do that. Like, let's talk it out, bro. Do something else.
Yeah, I think I would agree, because it really helps out this modern generation. Because think about it, a lot of our grandparents lived during that time. A lot of our parents lived during the fallout of that time, and we're just sort of left with like, having to read history books, maybe seeing like I don't know, like video or whatever, like, basically we're just left sort of like reading about it and all that, and we aren't able to see like the true, or feel the true magnitude of it just from history books, especially because, what they say, history is in the hands of the victors and all that. So it's like, I don't think it's too crazy of a thing to say that whatever the U.S. writes about it in their history books is obviously going to have a little bias towards it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, to see a movie like this that paints it in a true light, in a sense, that shows off, all the different sides to it, the sides in support of it, the sides that were against it, to show all the, to show all the different sides to it all, and, to show like all the effects, to show, the sort of impact this all has, it paints it, I guess, if you want to say, in a modern light for, the modern people to like truly understand it, to truly feel its impact, you know?
Mm-hmm. It. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I was about to say something.
I'll say this. The first time I watched it, I think I told you guys, the first time I watched it, I literally walked out the theater and I was like, I was so shaken and disheveled by it, because I was just like, how do you go back to doing anything after that movie, you know? Because I saw someone similarly say, like, they were like, oh, you know, people mention doing, like, the double header, like, watching Oppenheimer and then Barbie, but, like, it's literally impossible to do it because, like, of the way you're gonna feel after watching Oppenheimer. And at first I was like, I don't know what they mean by it, but then it's like, after the first time watching it, I was so shaken. I was like, dude, that, like, you're, like, unlike any other movie, you know, like, I think I mentioned to you guys, I was like, oh, in other movies, you sort of have the saving grace of, like, oh, it's just fiction, you know, as crazy of a movie as it is, that's probably, like, the chances of that happening are near impossible. Whereas this, it's like, you go see that movie, and there's nothing to save you from the reality, because it's like, that movie is reality, you know? That final scene of seeing all those, you know, warheads launching into the sky one by one, it's like, that's gonna be reality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all because of the people in power, you know? And that's sort of like the shaking reality of it all, is it's like, there's nothing really we can do about it, because it's all about the people in power, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's very different from, like, Dunkirk or Quiet on the Western Front, like other war films where it's like, oh yeah, here's the story of this soldier who was shot at thousands of times, had survived, you know, bombings and stuff. Because, like, it's very difficult to picture yourself in that situation, much less survive it. But then when it comes to, like, atomic bombs, like you said, the people in power have complete control over it. And it could affect literally anyone. We live in Los Angeles, is one of the biggest cities in the United States. We're a target. If North Korea, Japan, not Japan, because Japan's pretty chill nowadays, but if North Korea was like, you know what, I'm tired of the West, nukes, we're literally going to be the first ones to get hit. And what are you going to do against the nuke? Bunkers aren't made anymore. Houses are not, you know, built with with shelters in the bottom just in case of nuclear threats. Like, we literally have nothing, and it's a lot scarier because it could happen to literally anyone. If you live in a major city, you're pretty much screwed when it comes to a war involving nuclear weapons. And even if you don't, you can still get.
And not only that, but again, it was a common theme in the movie about the whole chain reaction and the whole atmosphere lighting on fire thing. While that may have not happened, yeah, like you were saying in the first episode, Oppenheimer and Einstein at the end of the movie basically talked about it happened just in a different way. Because now, the chain reaction that never stops is the atomic bombs themselves. Because if one of these other countries ever decides to use one, all it takes is one for the other hundreds to be used, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes one city being bombed. It doesn't even have to take the city being bombed, right? All it takes is one being launched, and every other major power in the world that has those bombs readily available, they're launching theirs right back, you know? And that's sort of the chain reaction that they were talking about at the end of the movie, you know?
The thing that's kind of scary is the first bomb was made, 1945 and 1946? Around there. And just not even 10 years later, a bomb that's 1,000 times more powerful was created. And that was 1954. 70 years into the future, just imagine how much more powerful the weapons have become. Like, there really is no hope. If nuclear warfare does begin, and as you were saying, the chain reaction happens with one goes off, and then the country that was bombed responds with their own, and then soon there's like alliances between certain countries, and everyone's just nuking each other. Literally, that's the end of the human race. There's no recovering. It's not like, oh yeah, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were able to recover through decades of work and effort and, pride in a new beginning. Just imagine if thousands of cities now have to recover because of it. There's not going to be enough resources available to do that, or like the will to recover will not be as strong as, the pride of one country. Because if the entire world is destroyed, everyone's lost everything. The few remaining people are, surviving our morsels of food. No one's gonna be like, all right, let's start building our schools. Like no one's gonna listen. Like, you literally did this to us. Now you want us to build the country that you destroyed. It doesn't make sense. But
and not only that, don't even
go ahead.
You can't downplay the environmental effects that would happen from all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you basically might as well be lighting the atmosphere on fire through all that. But yeah, the movie definitely paints all this, and it really leaves you with that feeling. I know a lot of that, like, a lot of people are like, man, this just sounds like super depressing. But like, again, that's sort of the scary reality you're faced with after watching this movie. You're like, this is actually happening, like, to this day. This isn't something that happened once and stopped. Like Gio said, less than 10 years later, they had already developed something like stronger and all that. So it's like, it's a very scary reality that the movie paints beautifully. Like, it really does it well and does it justice and really, nails it on the head and gets its point across that, this is our reality that we've unfortunately let pass by, like, year after year as time passed, And it's,
Mm-hmm.
again, it sort of leaves you with that, like, hopeless feeling, because you're just like, well, what are we supposed to do about it? There's nothing we can do, because it's all about the people in power, And they're never going to suffer the consequences for it. It's always going to be the people of, the countries that have to suffer for it,
And there's another scary thing about the whole, people of power having, complete control. They also have great influence on how their people feel. Because if you think back to when the Emperor of Japan, when America, for I think it was like multiple weeks straight, dropped flyers onto the cities that were going to be targeted, with flyers saying, "Oh, the city is going to be bombed. Evacuate." To reduce casualties. The Emperor was like, "No, they're lying. Just stay. We got you, bro." And because of that, the majority of people stayed, thinking, "Oh, the Emperor. We have our faith in the Emperor. The Emperor knows best for our people," and because of that, a lot more innocent people died than there should have been. I guess, am I even like incorrect in saying that if people left the city, would it have made it like a big difference? Because like, I don't even know, bro. But just imagine because people are very easily influenced nowadays. Look at social media is like a big thing. Like, literally, people are doing the dumbest of challenges just because it's funny. Like, right? So imagine if Trump was in office and he's telling all the Trump supporters. Actually, he did with the whole January 6th thing. He literally got thousands of people to storm the Capitol. That's crazy, bro. We're doomed. I have no hope for humanity anymore.
Yeah, and it definitely is a little bit of a scary reality. Just how much people are, I don't know what's the way to put it, but kind of like how you said, easily influenced, easily willing to do, like, I guess, how easily they have allegiances to stuff, I guess you could say. you know, and like how much they're like willing to. And you know what? It's not even just in the political world. It even goes down to like little things. It's uh, like cities, you know, like gangs and all that. You know, the allegiances these people have to stuff like gangs, to stuff like the groups that they're in and all that. You know, it makes me think about this song that I'm like probably gonna do a video on, like in the future, where like one of the lines is like it says like don't die for a city that wouldn't die for you, I think is what like the line is, you know. And that's like sort of the similar thinking with stuff like at least like that's the similar thinking I have for stuff like gangs, for stuff like political parties and politicians and all that. It's like, to me, it's like none of these things that you hold allegiances to actually like care about you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like the gangs that you're a part of, they don't care about you, you know. These politicians, they don't care about you, you know. You're irrelevant to them. You're just another number to them, you know. And yet you're over here willing to give your life for something that, you know, would just easily discard of you and move on, you know.
The scary thing is they did that to Oppenheimer, who literally gave them the ultimate weapon. Like, the atomic bomb put the U.S. in such a world-dominating place, and then they're like, "All right, thank you. Just give us the blueprints, and then you can go on your way."
Yeah,
and then you think that they actually care about a person who has contributed nothing to society, or, you know, push the country forward.
Yeah, like, yeah, good thing bringing it up. They, like I mentioned in part one, they literally highlighted that in the movie. As soon as this project was done, as soon as they sent everyone away from Los Alamos, what happened? Oppenheimer has the whole issue of his security clearance. His brother is basically blacklisted. Who else did I mention? That one of his students, I forget his name, but one of his students who they kept thinking the entire time, oh, he was the spy that infiltrated Los Alamos and all that. No, he wasn't. What was his name? It wasn't Ludwig. What was it? It was Lud something. I forgot his name. Or Luminitz or something like that. I forget what his name was. But basically, like, you know, he was a student of Oppenheimer. When they found out that there was a spy in Los Alamos that was feeding information to the Russians, I think it was, they kept suspecting him. And what happens, like I mentioned, he ends up having to just, like, work the railroads and basically, you know, go, like, he couldn't even, like, return to anything involving, like, the school or nothing like that, or even physics. Like, no, he's working a railroad for the rest of his life because, you know, the government basically threw all these scientists out. You know, they helped them do all this, and then the moment it stopped, we don't need you anymore, you know? And it was something that, oh gosh, I forgot oh my gosh, dude, who was it? It was during the Oppenheimer clearance scene. I forget who it was, but they brought someone in to interview, and he basically said, you know, if, like, you're going after this man for just having a strong opinion. You know, you're going after this man for having an opinion that opposes yours. And it's like, you know, it's crazy to see that, like, that's why they went after Oppenheimer. They went after Oppenheimer because he stopped showing support to them, in a sense. You know, like, he stopped showing support for them. He started talking about the realities of the bombings and why it was such a bad thing, and he didn't want to support them in developing an even greater bomb. And so what do? They go out and make sure that, you know, he can't be, like, that his opinions will no longer be trusted by the general public. Like, I don't know, this movie did such a crazy good job of just highlighting, you know, the reality that we live in, how scary things are and all that. And it's a difficult thing to talk about, but, like, it really is, like, a good discussion to have because of just how amazingly the movie was able to, like, demonstrate a lot of it, you know? But
I think we should talk about the cast.
Yeah, I was gonna say, moving on to a lighter mood. Definitely got to talk about the cast of this movie because there was so many great additions, so many great performances. Gio, what would you say were some of your favorites?
Obviously, the big man himself, Cillian Murphy, did an incredible job portraying Oppenheimer. I literally felt like I knew Oppenheimer personally. I'm just kidding. But his performance, his, what, 1,000 yard stairs were in peak. Everything, dude, everything he did in that movie was incredible. According to, people who are experts on Oppenheimer, I guess, said that his mannerisms were on point with when he put his hands on his hips, and then like when he got older, he would like push himself forward with, with this kind of similar hand position. Dude, he did such an incredible job bringing Oppenheimer to life, I guess. I really enjoyed Emily Blunt's character, Kitty Oppenheimer, in the later half of the film. I honestly thought that she was just an alcoholic who was, keeping Oppenheimer down. But this just proves how important it is to have a partner who is willing to go to hell and back with you, because she was there for him at every single point, at every single juncture in his career and personal life. She was even aware of his affair with Gene Tadlock, and still she's like, bro, when he found Oppenheimer in like the middle of the forest crying because she passed away, he was like, get your stuff together. You have so many responsibilities. You need to be there for people. You can't just give up because of this. You have the weight of the world on you. Get up, let's go home. Let's, move forward. It was her peak performance from her. Matt Damon as Leslie Groves was really nice too. I really liked his character. He's like very unlikable, but at the same time likable. He was just like a perfect demonstration of someone who has a job to do and does not have time for anything else. Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss. I hate his portrayal. No. Portrayal of Strauss was really nice, really good. I didn't know Strauss was a bad guy until the very end. I didn't know that Strauss had like a thing against Oppenheimer. I thought it was just like, a difference in opinion, or maybe they're like friends, but at the same time not really. I didn't know he had it. I didn't know Oppenheimer was living rent free in this guy's head, but he made me hate the character a lot. So W for him. I was actually surprised with a lot of the casting. Well, how do you pronounce his name? Kenneth Branagh?
Oh, is Niels Bohr?
The guy that that played Hercule Poirot in the I think that's him. I want to say that's him. If not, it's going to be very embarrassing. As Niels Bohr, that was surprising. The tether dude, that guy did a really good job. His character was more profound than it needed to be because of his performance. Who else? I was surprised. Honestly, I was surprised that Josh Peck made it into this film. I was like, how did that happen? Kind of like when Harry Styles was in Dunkirk. I was like, what? Who else? Oh, the Jason Clarke with the guy that was interrogating Oppenheimer. He did an incredible job at it. I really hated him from the start. He was on him for the entire thing, bro. It was such a good performance. There's probably more. Oh, Albert Einstein. His part was very short, but I really liked it too. That was Tom Conti.
Yeah.
There's probably more, but I just can't think of it.
I'm trying. It's because I don't remember his name, but the one who was representing Oppenheimer in the security clearance part, like, I think he did a real good job of just showing basically the frustration that everyone watching the movie was feeling because of freaking Jason Clarke's portrayal of Roger Robb, like the frustration with the fact that like this whole meeting was set up just to ensure Oppenheimer would lose, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the different parts where he was like, you know, how come we aren't presented with this? How come this is happening and this? And you know, I really liked the line when he was like, is anybody gonna start telling the truth here, you know? Of like what's really happening. Like I thought that was a real good line. I gotta agree with you with a lot of the ones you highlighted. Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr. were real good. Matt Damon was real good. I really liked the guy who played Edward Teller. Like you said, he just, despite his role in the movie mainly being, like, I guess if you want to say minor in a bit, because like the only real times you see Teller are when he's bringing up, you know, the hydrogen bomb, or you know when he brought up the mathematics about how it could set off a reaction that lights the atmosphere on fire. You know, like he has important parts in the movie, but it's not like, you know, he's one of the main like sort of characters. But like you said, you know, with the time he was given and, you know, the performance he gave, it really made the character stand out more, and, you know, feel like a big part of the movie. You know, Teller's character was really, you know, a sort of fun play against Oppenheimer. Isaac Robbie.
Who
are you gonna bring up?
I just want to say one thing real quick. With Teller, I really it felt like foreshadowing when he first mentioned using hydrogen for a bomb, and I was like, oh, hydrogen bomb, and then everyone was like, no, that's not gonna work, bro. And then it turns like literally almost a decade later, he finally figured it out. I thought it was cool how they showed how early the idea was. It wasn't like, oh, after the atomic bomb, that's when he started thinking of the hydrogen bomb. It was like, no, like even during the development of the atomic bomb, in like the very earliest of stages, he was pushing for the hydrogen bomb, and fortunately and unfortunately, he was able to make it a thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Who was it? Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, I also liked Isaac Robbie's character, because just like Kitty Oppenheimer in the movie, it's like the two of them were like his biggest support systems in a way, you know? Like, we saw how much of a friendship he had with Oppenheimer, that like he was willing to work on that project, you know, with him, despite the fact that like he didn't want to, you know, like he was willing to support his friend and join him along with it, even though he didn't really want to. And then even after all that, even when, you know, his fears became reality, he's still stuck by Oppenheimer to the point where when they were having that security clearance, you know, he was there to defend him and, you know, stand up for him and all that. I thought that was a real good character.
He was very caring of Oppenheimer. With like, he would make sure he ate something.
Yeah.
Even like when we first saw him in the train, it was like, "Oh, here, eat something," and then years later, decades later, he's like, "Oh, eat something again." I was like, "Wow, this guy really cares for his friend."
Yeah, I thought this has to be one of the best supporting casts the movie had. You know, because then you also get again like minor sort of characters who come into play, like a big part in the movie, like Rami Malek's character David Hill, who comes in to expose Strauss for, you know, the fact that he set up all that against Oppenheimer. You know, like when you first see him, he's literally just like a background sort of like pushover character. You know, like the one time we see him is like, first we see him in the background during the Chicago, like when they go to Chicago, and then you see him again trying to get Oppenheimer to sign a petition to not have the bomb dropped, and he just like pushes him away and all that, you know. So it's like he's very much a background pushover character, and then next thing you know, he comes in at like the finale of the movie to like expose Louis Strauss, and literally ends up leading to Strauss not getting his confirmation. And so it's like, it's crazy how like, even some of like the minor characters played a part in everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Real good supporting cast from this movie. I don't really keep up with any of it, but I've seen a lot of people say that they think like a lot of actors from this cast deserve like the Oscar for best supporting actor is what I've seen. You know, like a lot of people bring up Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., like Jason Clarke. Even like I've seen a ton of people just saying like you might as well give that award to this whole cast because like every supporting character in this movie was just really good.
I feel an Oscar coming for Killian Murphy.
Nice.
Hopefully, if he's not robbed. But, dude, I really want to go watch this movie again. It's like something, I don't know, I feel like something our kids are going to be talking about in school. Like, oh, Dad, did you ever watch Oppenheimer? Like, our history teacher was making us watch it. And I was like, I'm going to be like, I was literally in the third row watching it.
You're going to give him the 1,000-yard stare.
I'm gonna hit him with one of the quotes, and they're gonna think I'm Oppenheimer myself. But it's such an important movie to watch nowadays. It's probably the most important movie of the year, with its significance, because it's not a movie. It's so much more than just a movie. It's not like, oh yeah, did you watch Oppenheimer? Like, oh, it's a good movie. It's like, no, like this literally has so much impact on so many things, bro. It's like it deserves its own category. That's not movie. It's literally like, I don't know. I'm gonna find the word. I'll come back to. But it's not a movie. It's much more than just a movie. It's like how Overwatch is just not a game. It's so much more than a game.
What a comparison.
Like, I'm just joking. But yeah, I feel like everyone should go watch it multiple times even. Because I feel like the second time around, you'll probably notice more.
Yeah, you definitely will. But we got like 7 minutes left. And while we did mention that we can like cut episodes short if we want to, I think it would be a disservice to the listeners who know, especially a lot of your interest, Gio, if we didn't give a short portion, because you somewhat touched on in the first episode, but I think it would be an injustice if we didn't give a short portion to talk more in detail about the visuals and editing of the movie.
Dude, it was peak, man. Like, I know it's such a immature new generational way of describing it, but if you knew what peak means, peak is peak, and this is peak.
I know
the way that. Oh, my bad. Okay. Go for it, bro.
I know we touched on it in the first episode, but like, there's seriously nothing to describe just how great the scene of the bomb dropping really was. Like, they hyped it so much that people were like, "Oh, it's gonna fail," but like, or like it's probably gonna fall flat. But like, I know one of our friends felt like it fell flat, but to me, it's like the way they did that scene was just so amazing. Like we mentioned, like the moment the explosion happens, they cut all the sound. There's no like, there's barely like any soundtrack. Like it's faint, if even in the background, you know. Everything's sort of silent, and you get that sort of feeling of awe from everyone watching it, you know? Like, one of the scientists, he's so excited to, like, see it that he runs out of the bunker and, like, go, because, like, the bunker, like, has, like, a mound, so he's, like, he's still trying to protect himself with the mound, but, like, he goes behind it, like, he goes out of the bunker just to get a full view out of it, you know? You got Teller literally sitting in like a lawn chair with like no type of protection. He's just sitting there watching it. You know, the only thing he has really protecting him is he put like sunscreen on his face and he's wearing the glasses, and that's about it. Like, that's all he has, but he's like taking it fully in, you know. I forget who was the one that was sitting in the car. I know Lawrence was one of the guys sitting in the car, but I forget who the other guy was. But two of them are sitting in the car, and I think it's Lawrence literally gets out the car after the explosion happens to truly take it in, you know? Like, they really did a good job of, like, just showcasing, like, you know, the bomb scene, you know? Like, it was real good. It really puts you into it. And then, like, how Dom mentioned in the first part, like, the sonic boom just takes you out of it. I'm gonna expose Gio a bit. He jumped a little in his seat when the boom happened. You know, like it really brings you back to the reality. Like how Gio was saying in part one, where it's like you get the sort of beauty of admiring the bomb, and then the boom happens. The sound brings you back, and you're just like, oh snap! This is actually a real weapon of mass destruction. You know.
I dare say we felt the same thing Oppenheimer felt when he realized that what they created was going to create a whole world of issues. Because literally, Christopher Nolan did such an incredible job during that scene. I feel like if you say it fell flat, you're ignorant and you deserve a lashing. Because how could you say? I feel like Willie's just used to. I don't know what Willie. What goes on in his head for him to say it fell flat? Like, oh, that was it. He literally said that as soon as that scene ended. Like, that was it. That was so boring. How, bro? You literally just witnessed greatness, a masterpiece, a world class in direction, sound design, visual, practical effects. Because he doesn't use CGI. Dude, it was incredible. Everything about it, like with the whole when they were talking about the whole science thing, you know, the whole science is like, oh, it's chain reaction, and then it would cut to like the quick. Everything's practical effects. So I'm not gonna say the visual effects. Well, it is visual effects because it's visual, but not in the same sense of visual effects, right? Of just like a chain reaction between sparks, and then when they were talking about like the electrons and the isotopes, and they would show like the strings or like string-like things that were just like, you know, doing this thing, and then when the stepping, the increase of stepping during like the very anxiety-inducing scenes where like Oppenheimer's literally about to have hit the biggest mental nervous breakdown, anxiety attack of his life. Literally, he's going through the whole spectrum of emotions during that scene, and we're also going through those same emotions because of how anxiety-inducing the steps, the noises are of the steps, where they're just continuously increasing in tempo, and you're just there like waiting for it to reach its peak, and you know, for something to happen. And you literally, bro. I think it was like 3 or 4 times that my Fitbit told me to relax because my heart rate was way up too high. It's literally peaked. The sound design of the entire movie, the score of the entire movie is incredible. It's appropriate and everything. Everything about this movie, in my opinion, is perfect. There's no such thing as a bad scene. Even with the very awkward part where Oppenheimer is naked and during the interview, it literally made so much sense to me, because if you're looking at it from Kitty Oppenheimer's point of view, you know your husband is having an affair with another woman. The man that you love and adore has had relations with another woman. And when you look at him, that's literally all you can see, because that's, I don't know, it's just how it is. Like if someone comes up and say in the future, God forbid, you know, if you're ever in that situation where your partner's having an affair, every time you look at him, that's all you're going to see, or her in our case. That's literally all you're going to see. Like, you're going to see him, you're going to see her with the other guy doing the unthinkable, and it's literally just going to tear at your heart forever. And during that scene, it was like, that's the perfect illustration of what you would feel in that situation. And dude, it's peak, man.
Yeah, and one thing I'll mention real quickly, I'm going to try and get this in the minute we have left. Someone mentioned that, like, as the camera's panning, she's looking down, and as it passes, I forget the guy's name, but as it passes him, and you see Oppenheimer seeing her naked, she looked up, so, like, you're getting it from her point of view. So, like, right as it passes by him and it comes back, like, that's what you see. And then another underrated scene that sort of demonstrates the whole chain reaction theme throughout the movie, I thought was really cool, was he starts off with one student, and then you just keep flashing by, and you just see his classroom start growing and growing, and you get to this point where, like, the students are even following him out the class and trying to talk to him after it's all said and done, you know. But real great movie with 25 seconds left. Gio, give it a rating.
1,000 out of 1,000. No, infinity out of infinity, bro. Nothing is ever going to beat this for me.
Yeah, real great movie. Still feels like there's more to talk about even after 2 parts. But thank you all for joining for this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.